like 20 minutes, and so it's really soft. And I like it soft.
Yeah, I like ice cream that way. What kind of is it? A whole like tub of it or what?
Oh,
Like
it's a half gallon. It's
oh,
cookie dough. This is probably my third half gallon in probably like 5 days. I'm gonna
geez,
contract diabetes. Um, you know
you going
what I
through a
do?
bad breakup or something?
Oh, that's the reason why I have the beard.
Oh,
Uh,
well, I figured it was because you're eating ice cream too.
you know what I do is I'm a pretty physically. I think I'm pretty healthy. I'll I run probably. I mean, some people may laugh, but I'll probably average about 7 miles a week running. And so I run like every other day between like a mile and 2 miles. And well, I don't know if that really adds up to 7 miles average a week, but like, so I'll get my run in, and then all those calories that I burnt, I'll like just completely destroy my progress and eat a tub of ice cream, and then go to sleep. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, that's the whole. Well, do you sprint or do you jog? Like,
I I jog. I usually maybe sprint half the time for like the last maybe 10 yards until I hit my milestone. But most of the time, I'm just jogging. Sometimes I hit the runner's high, so I might increase my speed some. But I run barefoot, so
oh, okay.
I run on the beach. So I probably have stronger calves than most people, and I've been doing that. I've been running on the beach. When I'm in Miami, I've been running on the beach probably for like the past 4 years. So
That's good. Just run on the beach and go home and eat a gallon of ice cream.
yeah,
Now imagine if you didn't run on the beach and ate a gallon of ice cream, half gallon
I'll
or whatever.
I'll look like a typical obese American. Um, yeah, so I think I'm 6'7", 235 pounds. It's a lot of. Here's the thing, Miami Beach. Well, Miami in general. I live in Miami Beach. There's a lot of peer pressure to be fit. Like
Move back
it's
to the
kind. It's
Midwest, man.
well, I mean, it's a gift and a curse. Like there's a lot of peer pressure to be in shape, and so I
Yeah.
think that's good for me because whenever I'm doing a contract in like Hicktown, USA, like my health deteriorates like crazy because when I get off work, there's nothing to do. And I mean, and I don't do drugs, so there's like really nothing to do. And so I'll just spend my time at a Starbucks trying to learn something or practice coding because I don't have a life when I'm in like these hick towns. But if I'm in Miami, I got a life. I'm in a motorcycle gang. I might get a teardrop tatted on me. Like I,
There
I
you
have a
go.
life out here. So I'm not a killer though. I'm not gonna get a teardrop tatted on me.
But you are
Listen,
part of a biker gang, though.
yeah, I'm in Dade County Riders.
Okay.
So, what about you? What biker gang do you represent?
uh, I don't know. I guess my daughter just rode a bike without the training wheels for the first time this summer. So
Oh, that's what's up.
I'm starting the gang.
Did you record
I'm
it?
choosing to grow it over a really long period of time. My biker gang.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm
That's
just kidding.
predominantly women, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, we got a recording of it, but uh, it's kind of a fun deal, I guess, for her. But no, I've thought about riding a motorcycle. I'm just getting like a small Honda or something like that, and jumping around in that, or even a scooter would be kind of fun. But I just haven't pulled the trigger yet on it. So
What would you do, motocross, or would you do like crotch rocket?
didn't either. Probably it would be like just like a I don't know what you'd call it, a cruiser bike or whatever, and just
Yeah.
back and forth from work probably, or I wouldn't go too crazy with it, but
All right, you're in Minnesota, right?
yeah,
Okay. For the longest, I kept on thinking you're in Colorado, but okay.
no, that's other people. we
So
got we got snow though, huh?
that's still Midwest, right?
I don't know. I don't think Colorado counts as Midwest.
Denver is Midwest.
Is it? Then it's like the West Coast of Midwest. I don't know. Well, there's so much influence from California now in Denver, so I think of it as kind of like a like part of that region, I guess. Or I mean, it's more like mountainous than Midwest. I think a Midwest like to the Dakotas over to like Iowa or Ohio maybe, and then down. So I don't know.
I think Cleveland's the border of the East Coast of the Midwest because I would argue and say Pittsburgh's the Midwest. If you ever been to Pittsburgh, it feels like the Midwest. But people say no, it's East Coast. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. When you get into a mountain range, it's kind of nebulous, right? Appalachian, I don't know. So,
software, what's up?
not much. I don't know. I've been getting tired of software. Kind of reached the point where, well, not tired of it, but I don't know. Just like it's still fun to do, but the whole drive to really learn a lot more stuff and keep up with everything is just, I don't know. It sounds exhausting. So,
You think that's related to being a father?
no, not really. I don't know. Just kind of the grind of work, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. How about you?
So I had an interview today, and I had an interview Friday too. So I'm going to answer your question. If I don't, you got to remind me. So the interviewer, which is like the CIO of the company, said his first question was, "So Scott, what would the majority of your coworkers say about you?" And I responded, "They would probably say I'm difficult to work with." And but there's a reason, right? I said majority of developers, and I would say probably 75% to 80% that I've worked with, not all of them, just the majority, because that's what you asked me. They don't have the standards that I either have or that I strive to have. And so, like, I'm a difficult person to work with if you still don't write automated tests and you still manually debug everything and you still have messy code and copy paste code everywhere. I'm a difficult person to work with. I didn't tell him I'm a Samuel Jackson at the workplace, but I am. And so, but I thought he was going to end the interview right there, but we talked for like almost probably 45 minutes to an hour. It was pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah, it's nice when they don't just like say, "Well, that's it then." I suppose.
I mean,
I've never been in that scenario, but I don't know.
You never worked with people that you really wish you didn't have to work with?
Been in an interview where someone just shut down, but I don't know. I've had to work with people where I maybe didn't desire to work with them very much. I don't know. You know, the testing thing and how much you like testing. I have to wonder sometimes, though. I fail to find value in it sometimes. Not all testing, but like I watched this video and I don't remember who it was by, but the people who espouse testing at all levels and many levels of it, there isn't like, I guess this guy says, is that there's not really real research in it to show that it's worth what we put into it. Some testing they've done the research on and they can point to it and say, yeah, this is, I think it was regression testing or something like that. But like unit testing and stuff like that, I don't know. I got into it like thinking really hard for a while. Oh yeah, this has got to be the way to go. And the more I get into it, the less I feel like it's worth it. It feels like just going through the motions. Because there's people that develop that I've gone in, and they'll have unit tests, but it still doesn't, and other higher level tests, it still doesn't work because they don't do what I think is the most effective means, probably, is just exploratory testing. Like, you run your stuff and you try it and see what happens, and you try it in different ways, and you think about like, well, how would this respond if I did it like this or whatever, and then you really find what's wrong with it. And I guess maybe a couple times I've found stuff in unit testing that I wouldn't have caught. That I would have caught before I did exploratory testing on my own, but maybe, I might be missing the whole regression piece of it. But maybe testing is the wrong word for it. I do like the idea of documenting assumptions with tests and documenting intent, maybe. Like, if I know I've got some sort of piece of coupling where I can't really avoid it, and then it's like, well, how do I make sure that nobody just goes in here and doesn't understand that there's this other piece over here that needs to be there in order for this to work? How do I express this in a test so that if they do mess it up, it'll break, and then I can explain to them why in some way in the test? Like, that's valuable, but maybe it's just the degree of unit testing is just problematic for me. I don't know. I'm trying to talk a real long time so you can eat your gallon of ice cream here. So,
well,
ramble on.
I'm trying to not make you an enemy of mine. I have this unhealthy relationship with testing. Like, I mean, that was the first part of my career, so I have a deep appreciation for it. Plus, like, I have like this fantasy, which looks like it's not going to materialize, of being like a NASA space engineer, right? And I'm like at the command center, and they're doing like, flight checks or whatever that stuff is, and I yell clear, you know what I mean? And so I say all that because all that's checks and balances, right? A test is unit test. I think probably should be renamed to automated checks. That's all it is. Okay. When I was interviewing as the solutions architect on my last contract, my interview questions, half of them are geared around testing. And so, like, for example, I would ask, and hopefully the 2 or 3 people that actually watch this video, hopefully this will be valuable to them. I would ask, like, so someone, I'll put you on blast, all right? But you already got a hint, right? Just based on the context of this.
I know what's your position.
This is one of my favorite questions to ask somebody, aka destroy somebody that's interviewing for a job. I'll say this. So here's a scenario where QA or somewhere through the grapevine, tech support, they notify you that there is an anomaly or a bug or a defect, whatever you want to call it, in the system that you're working on or that you've worked on. And so that's all that you know. What steps do you take to resolve that issue? And I'll just leave it very abstract. Okay.
Sure. So what steps do you take to resolve? Did they report the actual behavior that they're seeing, or is it in your hypothetical situation?
Yeah. So that's one of the first questions that the candidates ask me, and I say, sure.
Yeah. Okay. I guess for me, it would be to try to reproduce it myself in some way, shape, or form. I know it totally depends on what system we're talking about. Can I reproduce it? Like, can I actually go into production and try to reproduce it? hopefully we've designed the system that way so that we have some options to do that maybe. Or can I do it in a QE system or a QA system? That would be probably my first thing, is just try to understand the context of the problem, depending on how well I know the software itself.
Okay.
Once I've got a grasp on that, and especially the points that would be touched, I would probably look at logging or some sort of reporting if we've got it, to figure out what I can discern from that. It depends a lot on really how the system's designed. Do we have good logging? But I'm hoping we do. I'm hoping we've got tons of it. And I don't know. You just keep drilling in until you find it. I don't know. What's your thoughts on it? How do you do it? Or do you say, I don't get there in the first place?
So then they usually say what you said,
yeah.
And I respond, is that all?
Yes, because I figured it out. Damn it.
Well, they don't say that part. Then they keep reaching. All right. So what you said, the majority of them use that same thought process, right?
Yeah.
I agree with like maybe two parts of it, right? So yeah, sure, I want to be able to reproduce it, preferably in QA. In an ideal world, QA is a clone of production in an ideal world. Once it's confirmed that I can reproduce that anomaly, the next thing that I do, remember, we're on the context of automated tests, is I check to see if there is a test that covers that particular scenario that we use to reproduce that anomaly, okay? If I have not identified a test in our regression suite of tests, then I will take it upon myself, if feasible, to write an automated test to reproduce that anomaly. That automated test is only executing business logic. That automated test initially is not executing integration, points, for lack of a better term. If that test passes, right, the test that executes business logic, if that test still passes, then divide and conquer, process of elimination. That gives me reasonable confidence that because that test passes, based on the steps that I use to manually reproduce that, and that I just automated those steps, then it gives me reasonable confidence that this is not an anomaly that's related to business logic. This is an anomaly that is likely to be related to integration, whether it's a funky query that's written or something related to some integration point, aka external system, that's contributing to this anomaly. So that just halves, for lack of a better term, or removes an investigation on the actual domain logic side that I just don't have to worry about, right? So that just reduces a significant amount of time. Now I can focus on the query that was written, whether it's a stored procedure or entity framework or anything like that, or any configuration file, some endpoint. And it just completely removes a category of things that could go wrong. But that's not it. All right. Would you like to carry on, or you want me to keep on going?
No, go ahead.
All right. So then I'll try to lead them to that, right? And maybe a quarter of them to a third of them, based on me trying to nudge them in that direction, will go there. And so then they stop, and I say, okay, cool. Is that all? And then they say, then I check it in. And I say, okay, is that all? And then they're like, yeah. And so then I would say, okay, well, now that you wrote that test, that can be included in your suite of regression tests so that that particular anomaly never ever gets caught in production again. All right. This is what we do with airplanes. This is what we do with rocket ships. Okay. And in addition to that, it's probably a good idea to map that test to the anomaly ID or business requirement ID so that there's some traceability. And that's pretty much it at a high level. Is that, and the reason why I'm saying all this is the context is there really significant value in writing automated tests? And I would say, yeah. Not only does I think it provides you a target that you want to get to, but it also supports troubleshooting, which you could use, divide and conquer process of elimination. And so a lot of people, they don't view it as a regression suite. That that's one less thing that you have to worry about as you continue to craft the system or the software. So I mean that's my opinion. I'm sure that there could be a debate about that, but
Yeah, well, the whole thing, the idea of when you actually find something wrong, that you write a test about it, that I'm in full support of, so that it never happens again. What some of the problem that I have is that we try to invent, like, how might we use the system that we will cause, that I have to check and verify it works a certain way. And like, we know it works that way if you just run it once, which you should be doing anyways. It runs that way. But we try to guess at what might go wrong, and there's so many assumptions that we make in code that it's impossible to get all of them. It feels like, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of like, it depends too. You talk about rockets and all of that. When you're dealing with any sort of safety critical thing, or extremely high dollar stuff, like rockets, I feel like there's a different, service level that you'd have to give on that kind of thing. So context matters, right?
oh, okay. So let's talk about an IDE like Visual Studio. Can you imagine Visual Studio being built without any automated tests?
Can I imagine it? Yes.
Okay, so you could imagine 10 million lines, 20 million lines of code that have no tests whatsoever, and they're still able to pump out features every 3 weeks.
In Visual Studio code, you mean? Or
no, Visual Studio.
Oh, in Visual Studio, I don't think they do every 3 weeks. I don't know what dollar amounts they have behind it, but yeah, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about giant, big budget software that's extremely.
Well, you said mission critical systems. I'm talking about an IDE that people use as a tool to get their work done.
Yeah, it's just mission critical to a lot of people, right? I don't know. I'm. Let's just say I have there's a certain point where I think, like, we get to accepting things that this is the way it is and that it's right, but we don't question it. And I just like, for software and testing, it's where's the data that says that all the amount of time that you put into this type of testing or these type of testings, has a profound impact and will save you money over the long term. Hard data, research data on it, not just anecdotal. I went to a conference and I think this works good, so I'm sharing what I think works good, with other people.
Okay. So you think that manually testing software that's loaded with features is going to be faster or take the same amount of time as executing automated tests?
No, I didn't say that.
I mean, every time you fix a bug, every time you add a new feature,
Yeah.
it should probably be tested before it goes back out.
Yeah, I'm not saying that all testing is bad, and I think at that high level, going through the major 80% flows with some sort of automated test is probably valuable with regression testing. But when it comes to like unit testing and integration testing, potentially acceptance testing, um, at certain levels, especially the unit testing level, I question some of the value of it.
Maybe we have a difference of opinion because maybe we don't have maybe we have a different understanding or interpretation of a unit test.
Sure.
So to me, by definition, I don't care about what the actual definition of a unit test is. And hence that's why I kind of like always say like automated tests, because people always deem me when I say unit tests, um, because I'm testing at a higher level, the view model or the controller. That's what my automated test targets. And it just tests the behavior that's exposed or the operations that are exposed on that controller or on that view model. And that's it. Where there's just a lot of people who say, oh, no, that's not a unit test. I'm like, okay, well, so like,
Yeah.
so
Well,
some
unit
people,
unit is intentionally vague, isn't it? Because a
well,
unit could be anything.
well,
But I mean, it's definitely not integration testing, right? Where you've integrated with the database or
right.
whatever.
So if your argument is, and if your argument is what I think it is, then I completely agree. If your argument is, I'm not sure what the value of testing methods or classes in isolation of the rest of the system, I really don't understand. I really have a hard time um, developing an appreciation for that practice. I would agree with you.
Okay, there. That's exactly what I'm getting at.
Okay.
All right. So, because it's like I feel like I could run the code and I could test it at manually myself during development at the level that you would test an automated integration test or whatever. And I could just check the behavior and I would know whether I did it right. And now maybe I would have caught some of that, but I don't need to test that every exception does this or whatever. And yeah, those can produce bugs, but it's like if I'm writing it focused and I check those things and I do some exploratory testing, like I'm probably gonna ferret out most everything. And I've written unit tests around things that have been broken before. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't need a test to tell me that I know how to do a logic, a not this or whatever. Maybe if I was doing a very complex algorithm, then like, yeah, it helps to kind of maybe do some of that test driven, which is what you see in a lot of these videos. Like, oh, let's do a game of poker, unit test a game of poker, or unit test a scoring of a bowling game. Well, great. If I was writing scoring of a bowling game, I guess this would be helpful. But like, if all I'm testing is that this one condition is branched or whatever, and it goes this route or this route, it's like, well, why do I need to really test that when I could just run it at a much higher level and verify it? It should be run anyways. I don't know.
Because again, we have difference of opinion. That's okay. It's just I've been through the pain, and I've been on death marches, right? Like, and I promised myself that I wouldn't talk about functional programming. But here's the thing: with object-oriented programming, I would say with extreme like bravado that object-oriented programming relies heavily on side effects. It executes statements and not necessarily deterministic functions that return a result, right? So because object-oriented programming, C#, F#, Ruby, whatever else, relies on side effects, sure, your intent for this one scenario, whatever the setup is, whatever you're going to execute, and whatever you want to verify, yeah, that's straightforward. The issue, I think, is it's becoming increasingly complicated in regards to the cognitive load to really understand the ramifications or the cascading side effects of the rest of the system. Meaning that, yeah, you fix this bug and this bug appears to be fixed. How do you know that the rest of the system behaves like it's supposed to behave if the whole system is based on ricocheting side effects going everywhere? And that's the thing where you're not going to know. You're not.
Well, you try to minimize side effects at all cost, right?
Well, yeah, a combination of that and taking advantage of the compiler, where
Sure,
you
yeah,
really
type
rely
system.
on the type
Yeah.
system, and the whole like isolating specific areas of that system where it is feasible, it's not going to be too complicated to make illegal states unrepresentable. Then yeah, but I mean, the majority of object-oriented developers, this is what we were taught is to tightly couple state with behavior. And so like unless you're working siloed, like this is just object-oriented
Yeah.
systems are naturally, they rely on side effects in order to accomplish an objective. So
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I like I said, from the unit perspective, I see what the thing that you said there though is that you don't know that the rest of the system is gonna, and when you get to that system level, yeah, that can have major cascading effects that you may not realize because you never tested all of this stuff together with that one change in place until you get it out there and do the whole system test at one time. I like that level of testing. And if we can get that to be automated, that which there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to nowadays. That's I feel like that's much better. But the big thing that I have problem with is that people say they test and then they still write code that just doesn't work great, and it's just mainly because they don't open it up and just ask themselves what if, and look at, well, what if I do this? What if I jump around this way? And you actually play around the boundaries a bit and explore from a user's perspective how the system might work if you do certain things. And if you just did that for like 10 minutes, you know that, oh, this doesn't feel right, or oh, I didn't expect that. And I've caught way more stuff doing that kind of testing than I've ever caught with any sort of unit testing. So
here's the thing. I've been told by some people that I respect, and with emphasis on some people I respect, that that's not your job. That's QA's job.
No. See, I read that Bob, was it Clean Coder, Bob Martin's book, and I really took to heart that the SQE should find nothing, like the QA person. If you have a separation in the organization between a QA person and someone who develops, not everyone has that. I currently have that in the place that I work, but I feel like shit every time that I feel like shit every time I deliver something that's got a bug in it to an SQE person. I'm happy that they break my stuff when they do, but it doesn't matter how many unit tests I've written. If I've done something I don't understand and they find it because they're doing exploratory testing, I could have just done that myself up front and saved the whole hassle. So I don't know. I don't agree that I don't like that mentality that it's not the dev's job to figure out that their stuff works correctly.
Well, that's not what I was saying.
So okay,
and I'm kind of on the fence because I can understand why. Like some of these people are my mentors, and I can understand why they say that. But when I first heard it, I was appalled. I wanted to drag them out in the middle of the street, right? Because that's how much I was against their opinion.
Sure.
But I think what they're saying is what I heard you say is that, let me start over. What they're saying is developers are not being paid to do exploratory testing. They're getting paid to satisfy their requirements. Happy path and sad path, not exploratory testing. That's a different role, and a developer's limited cognitive load, because I can't find a better word than that. Because there's only so many good hours in a day that we are really razor sharp when solving problems, right? I would say that I'm only good for 6 hours, then I'm done.
I think that's about true of everyone.
Yeah, my productivity goes down about 50% after 6 hours. So I think like their argument is you should focus on what you specialize in and what you're most productive in, which I don't want to say being the code monkey, but basically delivering software, right? And not trying to figure out all the edge cases. Well, yeah, edge cases. I see both sides. There should be, I think a developer should consider some edge cases, but I don't think they should go full throttle and put on that QA role. Because if you ask me, the job of a QA isn't to prove that software works, it's to prove that it doesn't work. I mean, that's the way I started my career. That was beat into me. And so they're going to try to figure out all the different ways to break that software to prove that, or to demonstrate that software should not ship.
So, yeah, and I want to make it so they can't find anything.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a good use of time. But it makes me understand the problem. When I run into something that I don't, I do run into. If you think through the edge cases, in a lot of cases, you'll find ways where things just fall apart completely. But and a part of it is taking on that role of testing your own stuff a little bit better, is to actually consider, is to actually know when it's an edge case worth fixing or not. And thinking through that, because you could get into something, well, it's like, well, this will happen in a very, very edge case where this would happen. It would have to be this obscenely like crazy set of events, and the outcome would be like not really that bad. Well, hey, maybe you just let that one slide, but at least you know about it or whatever. I don't know.
So, do you think the security expert would let that ride?
Would a security expert let that ride? I don't know. Depends.
For something that is less likely to happen by
are we talking about
an authentic user? No. I'm saying, like, for example, there's a difference between an anomaly that is very, very unlikely to occur by an authentic user of the system.
Yeah.
But that anomaly could also be a quote unquote exploit for someone wanting to try to compromise the system.
Well, yeah. That's just another aspect you have to consider, obviously, is when I say that the outcome, if this happens, isn't bad, if it's something where like we'll have catastrophic data like leak, well, that's a really bad outcome, and you should probably close that.
Yeah.
Because they will exploit that stuff. But if you come down to it, and it's like, based on my understanding of the system, the worst thing that could happen here is that someone has to refresh the page. Okay, maybe we'll just let them refresh the page if that happens. Like there is a bit, but if you're talking something where it's like, a nuclear missile, and you find out that 3 layers deep, if they do this really weird set of events, it's going to launch the nukes. Well,
hold on.
you
something like
probably have
that.
a very huge ethical reason to not let them tell you not to fix it. Like you should fix it.
That reminds me of the Hawaii scare.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I bet if somebody sat down and exploratory tested that on their own as a developer, they would have said, these buttons are too damn close to each other. This seems like it'd be too. I bet somebody actually did that. They accidentally clicked it 300 or 400 times. Like I'm going to be very vague about this because I can't really talk about what I'm working on with my client, but there's this way that this flow works where you push a button to get to start like a quoting process, right? And it's like 2 layers deep and it's small and up in the corner, but it's like the most important thing. They want to drive people to request this from them. And it's like, and I don't know how many times I've accidentally pushed this other button that should be that creates like a container for these things. I've pushed it so many times and I know that this is going to be a big problem. Like, how do I do this? But I have no real ability to impact that as a developer. So that's what your job is to do this, not think of this. That's what that mentality gets to, is that you start to dismiss good ideas and things where people have experience and they can contribute. So
what brings me to the next conversation of which I think you're alluding to is what's the expectation of a developer? Because I feel like now I'm expected to be a UX designer, a user interface developer, a mobile developer, desktop developer, web services developer, a DBA, security analyst. Like what?
Yeah, I'm whatever you want me to be. So yeah, no,
Oh yeah, we'll pay you $95,000 a year. I'm like, look at everything I'm giving up to assume all of these roles.
Well, that's why you just got to get good at fast learning or whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, what's the role of a developer? To make software that works and deliver it.
Well, okay. Is that it? Like, yeah. Which part of software? Should all developers be a full stack developer? Should they not only know desktop and mobile and web? Notice that I'm saying everything UI, and a system is more than just UI, right? A system doesn't always have to have a user in front of it, right? It could be other machines that are interacting with the system. Like, what's the expectation of a developer? Because I feel like these customers are being really greedy. They get upset that you're not a UX designer. They get upset that the app that you built doesn't look like the app that Netflix built. Like it's like I'm not skilled in that arena. You're paying for me to build a system, not for like artistry. I don't even know if that's a word, but not for like anything that humans love to look at. So I say that because I think you were venting about the user experience of a system that you're currently working on that is going to be an issue in production. And like, well, is that really your responsibility? Or is that the responsibility of someone that specializes in human interaction? So.
Well, I mean, it probably, like all things, all answers to every question it depends, right?
That's a smart answer.
I mean, can the company afford a UI UX person?
Well, is that's my problem?
It might be if they're asking you to try to do it. I mean, if you're saying, well, sorry, I won't work on your UI, well, they might choose to not hire you and hire someone who does say that they'll work on their UI.
Well, what I'm saying is, I don't specialize in creating a wonderful user experience. I can throw something up there for a user to interact with. And for me, as someone that's very techie, it's okay to me, right? I might look at it and say, that's okay. I've I've played around building applications and received feedback like, Scott, this doesn't look professional. Scott, you're going to get a UX designer to clean this up, right? Scott, come on, man. This you need to do something about that, right? That's I've received that feedback so many times that I've accepted the fact that I'm not a UX designer, and what looks okay to me does not look acceptable to normal people. And so,
Yeah, but I mean, there's I don't know. I think I don't know where I heard this, but there's a actually it might have been that same talk I referenced before, where there's value in just getting on something and if you play with it a bit, there should be a feeling that it's right. Like, and if you don't feel that it's right, there's something wrong with it. Like just like you should be able to jump on and just get a feeling. Now there are for design, I mean, there are like principles you can try to abide by that where it's really obvious, like groupings, if you have something grouped together, they're perceived to be related to each other. Like that's one of the Gestalt principles or whatever. Like knowing some basic stuff like that and doing that. Now, if you want to make it look nice, like UI design, yeah, I mean graphic design, that's a totally different discipline for sure.
but they want to
But
pay you the same amount of money. So
to be a graphic, and there are people that can do that. They can write software that way, but you're to their point, I mean, there are people that can do it all, and there's some people where they're great graphic designers are going to make it look good, but the code behind the scenes definitely going to fall over under the slightest amount of pressure because they don't think of design. They don't know the other sides. They don't know about coupling and cohesion and naming and maintainability and
test automation.
performance and all of that stuff. They don't think about security as much. I've run into at least a couple of times in the last few months where people, with all well intentions, they think this is a good idea, and I'm like, you realize this is a giant gaping security hole, right? It's like, well, no, because they hadn't thought of it that way before. Because if they've spent a lot of time in the UI, for instance, and not on the server side and not building a system where the two interacts, you don't really think about it. You don't have as much opportunity to think about web security from an OWASP perspective. You're only in the client in web clients anyways. There's no like OWASP security. It's just everything is insecure. It's presumed insecure because it's in someone's browser. So why do you ever need to think about security? Yeah, I mean, the thing I think what maybe you get to is if you're just upfront about what you can and cannot do, or what you are willing to try to learn but aren't great at. It's taking a job is making sure you're a fit for a place, right? And that you're going to solve their problems. And if they're asking you to build a fantastic Netflix UI, and you say, well, I can do that, but you actually can't, well, then you're a total liar and you should get out of the game, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's happened to me a couple of times where like, I mean, there's someone that came to me last week and they got upset with the application that someone built for them, and they wanted it to have a makeover, and so they needed Xamarin Developer. And so I looked at it, I downloaded it from the Play Store and I looked at it. And like, I mean, it looked like it worked and it looked like the user experience of something I would do. Like, so I was like, I understand, your need, but I mean, this is very like user experience related and it's not really like Xamarin related. You need a UX designer,
Yeah.
and a developer that will build to that spec. I'm a developer, like I'm not a UX designer.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I saw why she was I saw why she was upset, but honestly, I probably would have done the same type of work because there's nothing else to build off of, and so
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a requirement, right? I mean, they're designing the UX and all that. It's not really a development role. Now you're saying it. Well, how is that different from testing? Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, when you said that a developer's job is to if you take it as a highly specialized thing, it's to write software, that, I mean, if you say if it works, because you could just write something to spec that doesn't work and say it matches just the happy path case that they put into the spec.
Well,
I don't think that's exactly what people want.
I agree. They probably want.
They just want their
they
stuff
want
to work.
someone.
They want to make money. Damn it.
Yeah, they don't want someone to plead the spec, right? Meaning that they don't want someone to say, "Well, this is a spec that I followed, and what you're complaining about, well, that's not in the spec. So you need to complain about the spec. Don't complain about what the system currently is." Like they're paying you to solve problems. I get that. It's just the more money that's involved, the more I need to protect myself and point to documentation. All right. I'm not interested in being sued. I need to say, this is what you signed off on. That's it.
Yeah.
So you can iterate the hell out of that spec, but I mean, it needs to be in there. So like money is involved, right?
Yeah, you make sure your contract is airtight on that stuff. So
that costs money too.
Yeah, lawyers, man. So are you talking, when you talked about the UI being cleaned up, are you talking about Nekeza there?
Or, yeah.
Did you end up dropping that, or did you keep going on it?
I dropped it. The last part I was at, it was probably not the last part, but there was a performance issue. So I didn't make any of that async. I actually talked about that on my job interview today. So it grabs my battery's running low. So I'm gonna put this on my profile image and grab my cord or my charger. So I left Nekeza so it grabs like Stack Overflow, YouTube, WordPress, Medium.com. And some people are really prolific. Mark Seaman, Tomas Petracek, some podcast people like .NET Rocks. Yeah. And so, when you have like 50, items that you produced, then it's kind of fast. It's okay. But when you have I don't know, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, like I never implemented pagination. How do you pronounce it? Is it pagination or pagination?
I say pagination.
I never implemented pagination, and I never implemented any type of like asynchrony for any IO whatsoever. And so there's like sometimes like a 10-second, well, not a 10-second, there's like a 5-second lag, for these people that are prolific at answering questions on Stack Overflow. And this was done in Elm. And I decided I didn't want to write any more Elm because I was writing it for about 6 months and I was done. I didn't want to do Elm anymore. So I ended up getting a job, and I just focused on trying to have a life after coming home from work or wrapping up with work. Try to get a girlfriend, just try to do other things.
I was thinking about Nekeza a couple of months ago, because one of my other friends is a Microsoft MVP. They're telling me about how there's all these requirements to report on everything that they like produce during the year. There's like kind of like quotas and stuff like that. They have to present evidence basically to Microsoft that they're an MVP. And I was like, well, man, I wonder if that your tool could just be like used as a reporting tool for them to kind of like gather all their stuff and say, here's all the community outreach I did and things I did that count towards this MVP status. I don't know how they can look at it or whatever.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a market for it. I mean, and I don't know if there's other programs where it's, 'cause I mean, you'd have a pretty limited amount of people that are Microsoft MVPs. Really, it's a big group, but it's not so big. Where
Um, so I mean, my ignorance is I do think it's a market for it. You don't necessarily have to be an MVP. You just have to be someone that, if you're like me, you want to make as much money as you can, and you're willing to demonstrate why you should have that money. And so for people that really want to be outliers and they want to make the 200K, 250K a year, like you got to demonstrate why you should have it, right? And I think that, Nikeza is like a tool to demonstrate that the proof is in the pudding. This is my work. This is the podcast shows that I'm on as I'm discussing, how to help businesses, how to get better. These are the answers that I've answered on Stack Overflow because I am the technical authority on these specific skill sets. I think there's value in it. I hate web development, but I was willing to try Elm because it was a different paradigm to building a web application. So I tried it.
yeah, I'm deep in Vue right now. I tried Elm for a little bit. I like it, but I hadn't really. I felt like it would be a bear to get any sort of like meaningfully large application working in it. But
Did you ever look at my main.elm page
I think
on
so.
Nikeza? Did you see how long it was?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I didn't know how to like all the
Yeah.
other files. I mean, they're cool, but that main page, like,
Yeah,
I'm not proud of it.
yeah, there's examples out there of how to do scalable Elm pages. It's just there's not a lot of them, so
Okay.
or scaled Elm apps. But I don't know. But Vue, I'm doing Vue, and it's pretty nice.
This is React View.
Vue like Vue like Vue JS.
Oh, okay. Oh no, I'm thinking React Native. Never mind.
Yeah, no,
There's so many frameworks out here.
I don't know. JavaScript annoys me though. So I really like utilizing type systems to ensure everything works correctly, and it's just I don't know.
Did you read Scott Vlashin's book, Domain Modeling Made Functional?
No.
You have to read that book. Based on what you just said, you should read that book.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in C# world, I've gotten pretty used to using the type system to make sure that I'm doing stuff right. Like I've gotten to the point where I'll create a type for every single possible response to like a particular call, because then I can actually I have to handle every single one, and I found a good pattern that in C# to make it so that I actually do check every single one, and if I change and add another condition, that it'll force it to not force it. I mean, you could still work around it, but as long as you follow the pattern, it works fine. But I don't know. I like using the type system as much as possible. I'm so tired of using the strings for everything and being like, or integer types or anything like that, and not knowing what the values can be and what's valid for them, and having to check them everywhere. Like if you just make your type system do that, it's like if you just make your type system do that, like a URI in C#, it just you're not going to get something that's not a URI if you're using a URI class, and it'll piss at you if you try to do anything other than that. Like it's great. The URI class is like I think the perfect example of getting over the kind of like primitive fixation and being like, okay, if you use your type system, you can guarantee that something has these certain properties and that it can't have anything else. Another thing I've gotten away from actually is validation. The idea of doing validation after you've created something. I hate that idea.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of stuff, but it's like, why don't you just make it so it's impossible to create an invalid one?
So how did you learn about those techniques?
Because
you're talking about Smart Constructor, right?
Yeah. Like basically, I'll make like a static constructor or whatever, like create this thing, and then I'll do all the validations on it. And if those fail, I'll return, like I have a result type that I'll use and say, okay, it's an error. Well, I could call it a validation error or something. It's going to have a type, right? And say that this is basically, I can't return this to you because it's some other, it's not, it's an invalid thing, right?
You see my screen?
Yeah, yeah,
So like, I mean, this is some of the techniques I learned from that book, and like, I think we're talking about the same thing. It sounds like you said you're doing something very similar.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
like,
mean, in C sharp, I do, I mean, we have a result type that looks pretty much like that. So,
oh, you guys created that type?
yeah. I
Okay.
read a, God, who was it? Somebody linked me an article about it a long time ago where they talked about how they used result types and maybe types and either types and or things like that. And I got into looking at those basic like generics that you can make that um, make things very explicit. And um, it was really good because then like when you're trying to read a resource or something in C sharp, it's really nice because result means like instead of just throwing exceptions willy nilly, you return results that could be an error, and then you have to handle them, which I liked. And then maybe types if you want to explicitly return this or not this, it's like great. Now you have to handle the not this scenario.
Yes.
But I
This
don't know.
is
I'm rambling.
no. This is what I'm trying to do. Is I try to remember that for any IO, for any operation that will more than likely rely on IO or have a dependency on IO, it has to be a result type.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
Period. And so, like, if I work on a team, I'm going to be a stickler on that. And this is something that I just recently adopted.
Yeah. No, it's hard to get other people to understand where you're going with it though. That's what I found is they're like, well, why can't I just it's like we have a result type and it has a way to access the value. It kind of, it operates like a, like a almost like a nullable primitive, you have like a has value and a value
I hate that.
properties. Like you can get at them. We did that way to allow certain places where it makes more sense to do it, to write it in a more imperative way. Um, but you still like even when you break from it and you write it imperatively, you still have to check. Like you can't just assume it was success. You have to check that there's an error, because otherwise, if you don't, you're getting a totally undefined thing because we don't really say what the value in the result type should be. If it's not, it's undefined. It should really throw an exception is what it should do. But I don't know why I didn't do that. Um, but
So
anyways,
here's something that I've been experimenting with. Uh, hold up, you do video games? Do you do C plus plus?
I no, I
Okay.
haven't done C++ for a while. I used to do a little bit in my old job, but I mean, it was like I'm fluent in C, but not so much C++. So
So what I've been experimenting with, and I don't know if you ever see my Twitter posts. I've been experimenting with this idea of like specification as library. Okay. Um, and it kind of reminds me of like header files in C++, where you, if I can remember header files, they expose the function types, but the implementation is in your CPP files. I think that's the way it works. And so, something that you said about, well, I think you said it's challenging to get developers to check to see if the result was successful or not,
well, yeah, it was more that they
or they're not
they
handling
don't
the SAT
they don't really
path.
grasp it as much, like really right off the bat. Like it clicked immediately for me, like, oh, it's either this or this, and you have to always check it. And just the need for it, first of all, when to use it or when not to use it, and then to actually use it correctly, like there's just a lot of learning that has to go into that process for people.
So the question is, have you considered, for those IO operations, have you considered creating a contract for it, aka an interface, where if they implement the interface, then they have to account for that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's all ourselves. I mean, we use interfaces for, I mean, dependency injection testing and all that kind of stuff too. But I mean, yeah, I'll use. I was really, really strict early on to say, listen, if you're gonna build anything, and it's possibly gonna throw an exception or have a result other than the type that you actually give, like you have to make it a result type, and you have to handle any potential exceptions that come out of it and make sure it doesn't actually throw exceptions. It always returns this type. So we have a lot of try blocks in places to make sure that we catch anything that could possibly be an error. But I don't know. I've kind of, I feel like people just got confused with it, and so I backed off a lot on it now. But I had a goal of having no null reference or exceptions, and I just, like, I think had people really like embraced the whole thing, that would have never happened, but they do happen. So.
Dude, you're trying to do this in C#. That requires work. When are you going to gravitate to where it's like, I mean, I thought you said you messed around with Elm. Like,
well, yeah, no, I
just stop fighting the language and just cross over to the other language.
I don't choose the language. The language chooses me. So I don't know. It's verbose in C#, but it's not impossible. It's just really easy to get around it is the problem. And so one of the patterns that I use now is if I'm going to have a return type with a bunch of different possible type results, like it might be that this thing wasn't found, or this thing, there's this kind of like validation error, or it's in an invalid state to do this, or whatever. There's different, possible results. I'll still use result for errors that I don't anticipate. But if there are known things, what I'll do is I'll create in C# an abstract class. And then as a base type for all the possible results. And then I'll create a private constructor with sealed classes in it that inherit that, so that it's only potentially the classes that are inside of that abstract class that it can be as the concrete classes. And then I'll create a match function that will accept functions for each one of those possible types. And then if you use the match function always, if you add a new type, any place where that match function was evaluated, you'll be able to use your type system to know, okay, here's all the places I have to consider this new possible outcome for this thing. And actually, the pattern works pretty well. I don't know, maybe I'm just doing something stupid, or I don't know if that translated well over text, but
do you
but I'm trying to find a way to stretch C# to do everything that I want it to do, in the same way that when I did C development, I tried to stretch it to do everything object oriented that I wanted it to do. So
do you set the compiler settings to be 4 or above for each project?
I don't know. I don't think we do. We might. I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, setting
to be more anal when it comes to warnings, treat warnings as errors, and be pretty sensitive to it, where you don't compile unless it gets addressed.
Some cases I don't know if we do it. We don't really have a lot of warnings. We try to not have them. I think it's more of a general, like, treat warnings as errors. Although we have a lot of warnings that aren't, like, we mark something obsolete with the intent to remove it, but they're counted as errors because we're using them. Like, okay, but yeah, I mean, we try to ferret all that stuff out. So I know there's people that I work with who. What are your thoughts on static code analysis and that kind of stuff?
I'm in favor of it.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
We're like yin and yang.
I don't know.
I'm all about using tools, and you're like, I don't want to use tools.
Yeah, let me tell you, there'd be a difference. Like, I would like to use tools for So in JavaScript land, there's ESLint and there's a prettier thing. Prettier will rewrite your code to follow a particular pattern. Um, that kind I can kind of get behind because it does all the work for you.
What, it's a
It's not
formatter?
yelling at me. It's not a cop.
It's a
It
formatter?
Yeah, it's a formatter.
Okay.
So in that case, like now I suppose there's practices with static code analysis that you can catch. And I'm not necessarily against ones where it's like, this is an established bad practice, so let's not do it. Um, but but if it's like, thou must make sure thou does not have one's extra space passed after this line, any white space at the end of the line, it's like, Jesus Christ, just take it out for me then. If you know it's there, you don't need to tell me about it.
Oh, you would hate programming with me then.
No, I'd get used to it. I mean, you get used to it. It's just, I feel like it's a hassle. Like I want it to be fluent and it's not.
Have you seen my code? Like, have you ever checked out my GitHub or anything like that?
I've maybe looked at some, but I haven't
Like,
gotten great detail.
you'll notice that everything is like, I don't even know if this is a word. Like, everything is in columns, right? So when you look at the editor, everything is very like laid out. Like all my lambda arrows, they're all in the same column. Like everything is just. I mean, I don't know if you. It's hard for me to explain. Like
I saw it in your F sharp that code you were just showing a little bit.
To me, like I have severe OCD. Like there has to be some type of consistency. There has to be some order. Like I get annoyed when I see like lines of code and like I'll see two lines where it says var x equals ABC, var y equals EFG, and the ABC starts at a different column than the EFG.
Oh, geez.
That bugs me. Like
So
I want.
You do like was it Control KD or whatever to format the page? Does it just make does your heart drop?
So I use Shift Alt and the up or down arrow key to select multiple lines at one time and shift them left or right.
Okay.
And
yeah,
my stuff is like Egyptian hieroglyphics, but everything is in order. Like people know I have OCD if they look at my code.
There's a developer that I used to work with who would in C we had it was a C89 compiler, and you had to declare all your variables at the top of a block. You couldn't declare them anywhere. It had to be at the top of a block. It couldn't be anywhere kind of like so right after the parent or whatever. And so he would actually make it such that everything it would be the like smallest name to the largest name. Like it had to go like that. Like, you know what I mean?
I'm not that bad, but I'm close. Sometimes I do that.
Yeah. But so I mean, it was consistent. So
no, let me see if I can find any examples. Like, I mean, do you see a pattern with this right here? How the start of all the values that are being assigned are all like they start at the same column.
Yeah, I would do that with like in C world. I'd do that with like preprocessor directives, like pound define this, and I'd define a bunch of stuff in a row, and I'd align all the values.
But did you do that with your properties?
No, hell no. This looks terrible, man.
Yeah.
So if you did Control KD, would it all go away? I think it's Control KD.
In C# it would. Look at my arrows. Like they're all beautifully aligned. If I do Control KD, no, it doesn't do anything.
Oh, okay.
In C# it would. That drives me crazy in C#. But
that's my favorite thing, man. It cleans everything up.
Hold up. I just found an anomaly. This is a defect. Hold up. Ah, okay. There we go.
Oh, see, you're lucky too that you can use spaces here. The client that I work for, they prefer tabs, and so you can't. It's really difficult to line stuff. No, but there's part of the thing I hate. I like consistency, but I feel like people should just be naturally consistent. But what I hate is when the a style cop presumes that it knows better than me how to convey a piece of information to you. Like if I'm particularly trying to massage in a certain way. And the other thing I don't like is it might prevent you from trying different patterns or things that would actually be an improvement. It's outside the norm. So, but the biggest thing I hate is when it yells at you about white space and it could just fix it for me. Like why write a tool that just yells at you instead of just saying, "Hey, I'll fix it for you." That's helpful.
Is that integrated? Is that integrated in Visual Studio's like static analysis tools?
Like,
because I'll see warnings about like white space, and I'm like, well, okay, exactly what you said. Okay, get rid of it. It's white space.
You can turn on.
It's at the end of it. It's not even
yeah, but if you have like style cop or whatever, they'll be like, yeah, you got white space right here if you have a rule set up for it, and that drives me nuts. I just hate it.
Yeah, I've got to disable that rule.
Yeah, something else I've gotten away from too, which I'm waiting to get slapped on, is using one class per file. Like I don't know, you might still like that, but I've in certain contexts I'm like, why? Why do we put one class per file? Now I have to jump around 5 different files if I want to look at like a set of related things.
Okay. So I think I know why you would say that. Only because I think you have evolved to a certain point of productivity when it comes to navigating that most people haven't evolved to yet. When you search for a file or a class or a method, do you use Control Comma?
Oh, like I use usually, I think it's Control Shift F will find all across the solution. But usually, if I'm at a place, I'll just follow stuff with F12 if I'm looking for stuff. I don't know. I mean,
you don't use Control Comma when you want to look for a class or a method or a file. That's a lot faster. I thought that was your reasoning.
All right, let me see what it does here. I'm gonna open Visual Studio.
Dude, once you start using it, then that's going to be
I use Control. I use Control period a lot, and I use Find All, and I use like Navigate Twos and stuff like that.
Control Comma, that's your best friend.
Oh my god, I gotta open this up. Maybe you'll just introduce me to something. Given that I've never used Control Comma, I still hate that they're all in.
It's going to be your best friend. That's like, it's my best friend, right? But people that navigate to classes by using the mouse and they go through Solution Explorer, that's why, because they don't know how to find a class. So they rely on a file name being the same name as the class. But if you use like Control Comma, you just type in the name of the class or the file or the method or property, then you just go right to it.
Maybe you have it mapped to something different because Control Comma is doing literally nothing for me.
You're in Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code. Visual
Studio proper, yeah. Community, but I don't think there's the hotkeys are any different because it's not a huge feature. Are you like context like a Solution Explorer or
in your editor when you hit Control Comma, you should see a drop down where you type in the name. It should be in your top right hand corner. What version of Visual Studio do you have?
Unless you're talking like Visual Normal, like 2017.
Yeah. Let me relaunch.
Like, if you go to Control F, that's a search for.
Yeah. No. That's primitive. That's when you're like, nah. Let me load up my solution again. And if your Control Comma doesn't work, then you probably need to reset your thing back to defaults.
I haven't changed it. I haven't done any.
Let me share my screen.
Are you talking about the drop downs at the top where they'll have like because like, okay, so you can choose project with, like I hover, it's Control F2, and that'll bring me up to a project drop down.
Watch this. All right. So are you watching my screen?
Yeah.
Control Comma. Do you just see that right there? And I can type in operations. Do you not see something like that?
No. Do you have a plugin installed or maybe because no, I don't know.
Oh,
maybe that's an advanced feature or something. I don't have
I never considered that. You don't have power tools for both C sharp on your machine?
Nah, I don't use any of that stuff. I should, but
Well, I mean, that's a good point. So like I have a C sharp over here, a C sharp project. And so I can go into this right here. And so I can do a control comma request ride.cs. I mean, it's just easy to navigate, right? XAML.cs. So it's probably my productivity tools that I installed as a Visual Studio extension. If it's just not working for you, you should install that, man. It makes it's just way more productive to get back and forth between pages, between Control Tab to iterate between the various tabs in your editor, and Control comma. Like you'll just be faster to do what you need to do.
yeah, I guess like I said, I haven't really. I've seen Control Tab or whatever, but I haven't really used it much. I don't know, but I still, like I said, I don't know. I mean, it's not really hard either when you're in a file to just find what you're looking for. If you've got multiple things in that file, especially if they're related. Like if I've got a class with a bunch of subclasses that are all really, really grouped nicely together, like here's a payment method and here's all of the possible payment method types that you can have. Let's just say credit card, purchase order, COD or whatever. Like, why have those split across a bunch of different files? I don't get it. Or like another place where I've done it is use Mediator a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a Jimmy Bogard library.
Someone mentioned that to me. I don't know who I talked to. Someone mentioned that to me.
But it's like yeah, so it handles the case where like you've seen probably controllers where they've got like a bunch of different they've injected like let's just like 15 different interfaces to do 15 different things, you know? And one of the things that it handles is that you like offload what you normally put into a controller action, or you might have put in a controller action. You take that out of the controller, you let the controller action handle the request and response, HTTP concerns, and you take the normal flow of stuff and move it off into this thing. And then you inject just one iMediator in, and everything's basically reduced down to a single method because you define what your input is, you create a handler for it, and that handler has a handle, method on it that you implement, and you say, okay, given this message comes in, what do I do with it? But I forgot where I was going with this. But yeah, so I'll put the class that is the command input and the handler all in one file, because why have them be in separate files? I don't know.
The only thing that I have in the same files are like if I have a interface in a really small class that implements that interface, like there's literally like just one method or one property, I'll throw that in the same class.
Yeah, but because they're closely related to each other is the thing. So it's like,
yeah.
I understand the group things based on cohesion, right? The principle of cohesion. If two things aren't cohesive, don't put them in the same file with each other. But if you have two cohesive bits that work together and like are closely related, or like produce an enumeration of things, that like there's no real reason to split them out into separate files.
Well, I don't like scrolling down.
But you like switching between different files all the time?
Yeah, that's easy. I just use,
even if the file's like only like 5 lines long or something like that.
No. I said I don't like scrolling down. So if it's 5 lines long, then I think I don't have to scroll down. But if I have like 2 classes that are each 100 lines, then I'm gonna put them in different files because I don't want to scroll down to see what the other class is.
I gotcha.
But it's just
I hate the overhead of creating files. I found this maybe
Control Shift A.
Yeah, maybe where I got into this is when I was doing some game development, like for game jams, where time matters. Like there's a lot of waste and overhead in creating a new file for each one of these, even if you use the
Control
hotkeys
Shift
to
A.
create them. Yeah, and stuff like that. But I found if you just put them all in the same module, you can jump around pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's probably faster compile wise too, because that's one less I/O to discover a file, I would think.
Yeah, maybe. And it seems like in functional programming, there's a lot more stuff put into modules, and maybe that's what it is that if you break stuff down enough to it, like if you take a class that would be a bunch of different methods with some data attached to it and break it down into a bunch of different classes that perform functions and a class that has data in it, doesn't make sense to split those up into separate files because you've effectively got what was one class before into multiple. You're just using classes as namespacing essentially when you get into it. Maybe it's just, I don't know.
Well, apparently none of this matters because you're done with building software and you're ready to be a middle manager.
No, I don't know. I think I'm too abrasive to people is problem. I actually got into this like kind of like a tech lead type position as a consultant too. I like just from a normal developer, whatever, but I kind of got like, they never really came out and said it, but it's like I kind of got removed from it. And I think it's because what they wanted was someone to do like business analysis job. And I'm just a much better, like I thought I still had to develop software. I took more to the keep developing software, think about system design and mentor other people, then help the people that are doing like the like keeping track of stories and TFS.
Administrative.
Yeah, all that BS. Like, I don't know. So I basically am not that anymore, but I went into a real downward spiral for a while, just being upset about that because I didn't like, they never said I was doing anything wrong or anything like that. It was just kind of like one day they're like, yep, we're kind of going this other route. It's like, okay, well, thanks for giving me a heads up, but
I've been in a position where like I was hired to be the quote unquote mobile architect. And when I accepted the position, they weren't interested in my ideas of how to model the software and put things together. They just wanted a scapegoat to answer to people that were frustrated with their mobile framework.
Oh yeah.
They just used the label mobile architect to get people to apply for the position. And once I got hired, again, they weren't interested in the architecture part and refactoring that. They were interested in someone being the neck to choke of frustrated developers that were trying to use the framework that quote unquote wasn't testable and had a whole bunch of other issues. And so, I mean, I've been in a position like that, and I'm like, why would you lie about this position?
I don't know. I guess that's pretty rampant though. Like,
and every 6 months, I see that position open up again in the same town, Hermitage, Tennessee.
Developers don't go there, right?
It shouldn't be that hard to figure out what company is there that keeps hiring this mobile architect every 6 months.
Jeez. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to look at hobbies and stuff that aren't so much, programming related. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on melting aluminum in a home foundry, making a home foundry and melting aluminum cans and casting crap. So I might give that a try.
That's the best you could come up with for a hobby.
I was talking to someone. Actually, I met someone last Friday at a function anyways, last week, this function my wife had, and I might actually be looking into adjunct teaching something at a community college here for software development. So, which is cool. I mean, it's a different teaching is a different ball game altogether. So, but if I do it and I'm successful, I can put adjunct professor on my resume, I guess. But I don't know. it sounds fancy, but it's kind of like adjunct professors, like when they have no one else, they look for someone temporarily to do this. So.
That reminds me, I need to fill out the application for Black Girls Code here in Miami. I flagged the email, and they sent it to me like last week, and I just haven't got around to filling it out yet. So I say that because that has something to do with mentoring, and maybe mentoring is kind of teaching a little bit. IDK.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is, right? So.
Any more conferences coming up?
No, I applied. I submitted to Code Mash again in Ohio, and I didn't get accepted this time around. So.
Does that suck?
Yeah.
Like I'm not laughing at you. It's just I submitted my very first proposal for F# conference, and they're like, "No, we're okay without you." I'm like,
"Yeah." Well, okay. I mean, I know it's no big deal because they get a ton. I mean, they get a ton of people, and it's. I got spoiled because my first two conferences first two times I submitted, I got accepted. So I was feeling pretty good. But now the last two that I've submitted to, I haven't. But I don't know if I'll try for another one until KCDC, which is probably in July or something, opens up again. So, but
dude, well, I mean, you got a family, so I was gonna say reach higher. Like, I want to give a conference in like Tokyo or Shanghai. Like, I want to be on the other side of the planet. People that
I don't even have my passport, man.
Look nothing like me at all. All right. And that'll give me a reason to try to learn a little bit of their language. I learned a little bit of Tagalog when I lived in the Philippines. I'm attracted to Asian culture, man. My girlfriend's Asian. Most of my girlfriends are Asian for the past 6 years. So you would never know that, but it's the truth.
Well, I wouldn't, because you don't really post pictures of you and your girlfriends all the time. So
nah, man, I don't want the
government. Pictures of you on your bike, though. I think maybe.
I don't want the government tracking anybody down that I'm close to. So.
Gotcha. So when you code something wrong for the government and the nukes get launched, you don't want your girlfriends to get in trouble.
I'm sure they have access to quote unquote metadata of all the video chats that we've done, and a whole bunch of other things, phone calls.
Yeah. You're in the system, man. You're on the grid.
I got my security clearance, so I know I'm on the system. It took, man, it took about 8 weeks for me to get my security clearance. I know that they're like, this dude, we done looked at his web history. I don't know. You sure you want to give him this clearance? Well, yeah, okay, let's go ahead. It's not that, I mean, compared to an 18-year-old guy, yeah. It took a long time for them to give me my security clearance, man.
Well, that's just the way the government works, man. It's
no. It took them a really long time to give me my security clearance. For any quote unquote normal person that was not a high risk, it probably would have taken maybe 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. It took me like 10, man, it took forever. They finally gave it to me. So.
Oh, cool. So you're not going to hang it up and become an entrepreneur or something and get out of the coding game?
I mean, I keep trying. Apparently, I'm not trying hard enough.
Damn.
Yeah. Like, I mean,
just keep eating ice cream.
I'm going to contract diabetes.
Drink ice cream now.
It's gone. It's gone.
Oh, geez. The whole thing, man. Wow.
Yeah. I was going to say, I like this F#. Like, I feel like I'm a student again. And so I'm learning all these different techniques. And then I'm learning why all these techniques that I just learned are bad. And I'm learning better techniques. And like, it gives me something to look forward to. I'm enjoying it. It's a completely different way to build systems. And I mean, I'm a creator. I love to build. So to answer your question about entrepreneur, I failed so many times trying to be that millionaire and trying to come up with that product or service that I just want to make hella money and just build things. I pretty much I'm at the brink of giving up on that $1 million paycheck that I've been fantasizing about. Um, in which the company that I'm on, whether it's co-founded or just by me, just originally gets acquired. Like that vision, that fantasy, that's slowly fizzling away. Um,
You just got to move out to Silicon Valley and join a well-funded startup and get equity.
well, yeah, I had an interview today for a San Francisco startup.
Yeah.
Um,
Would you move out there ever? They say I don't understand the appeal of Silicon Valley, but they say that it's like
I
everything's
interviewed
there
I,
supposedly.
I interviewed at Xamarin in San Francisco at their Twitter building, and like they put me up in the Hilton, and I looked outside my window, and I just saw poverty everywhere, and I was getting depressed, man. I mean, we all have different lenses, right? There's so many homeless people out there. Like from what I hear, San Francisco is expensive, and
Yeah.
like from what I hear, like it costs like $2,500, $3,000 for a 1.5 bedroom apartment. I don't do roommates. I'm too disgusting, man. I don't do roommates at all. And so, like, could I live out there? I don't know. I think I'm too like Midwest. I don't know if I could really fit into that hippie California vibe. Could I do 3 months, 6 months? Yeah. Can I do years there, like a prison sentence, prison term? I don't think so, but I never really gave it a try. But it's definitely a different vibe, you
Yeah.
know. I'm barely like vibing with this whole Miami scene that's East Coast. I thought it was the Dirty South, but it's East Coast. Um,
Well, you could always go to Austin or Colorado. Aren't those the other two big ones? That
no,
Seattle.
well, I used to work in Seattle. You know where I would go, where I would move to in a heartbeat is Toronto.
Oh yeah, why not?
Toronto's live. I don't know how far that is from. Well, that's far from Minnesota. Toronto's live. Like
Yeah.
that's like my second favorite city next to Miami. Um, at least for half the year.
I lived
So
only 2 hours from Winnipeg for 6 years or something, and I never visited like Canada. Like I said, I don't even have my passport or pass card or anything. I don't know why. I just love the United States so much. I want to be there all the time. So,
you never been out the country.
oh, never mind. I illegally passed into Canada this last month on a canoe trip in the Boundary Waters. We went up a hill called Warrior Hill in Canada
Good
after
for
we, yeah, and we found a decrepit old rusted Buick that somehow got left up in this remote area of canoe country up there. So I don't know, from back in the logging days. It's really weird, but yeah, we passed over into Canada a few times.
so you have no desire to travel to other countries.
I don't know. I kind of want to see like Ireland and some of these other like places with castles and stuff like that, but I don't know.
You have
Not
no
really.
desire.
I had no desire. You know what I want to do is I just want to make a ton of money and buy a lake home near where I live right now and just have like friends and family and have barbecues and shit and then just like I don't know, travel around maybe in the winter to someplace warmer, but I don't really have the desire to go out and see the world kind of a thing. There's places I'd like to visit, but
You think that has a huge thing to do with your responsibilities as a father and husband?
nah, I don't know. Maybe could be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I don't feel like I'm stuck here because of them or anything like that. It's more like, I don't know. I don't maybe see the appeal of jumping around from city to city. Because I live in a small town too. So,
Why
in
don't you
fact, I
move
don't
out to
even want to be
Miami?
in the cities. Huh?
You should move your family to Miami.
Be in a hurricane country? Are you kidding me? I might have to deal with the occasional storm or tornado here, but at least,
But
they're not terrible tornadoes usually. And
yeah, but the thing is you don't know you don't know a week in advance that a tornado is coming.
oh,
With a
sure.
hurricane, you know a week in advance that a hurricane is
Not the
forming and
recent
it's
one.
coming.
They were
The
like
recent,
the tropical storm, and then the next day it's a category 4.
yeah, I saw that, and it's too bad for them. I didn't get caught in it. I got caught in the I don't even know the
Was it
hurricane
that big one
name.
that took out Puerto Rico? Or
It was bad,
yeah,
and I was here,
eek.
dude. I'm pretty much on the beach. It was bad. This is the second time I gave up on life. No, third time I gave up on life. It was bad. So I'm still here. As many times as I've gave up on life, I'm still here. So yeah.
I don't know. I guess I don't know. Not that adventurous, I guess. I do like to whitewater raft though. I'd like to go to more places with whitewater rafting. So, but that's something like when you have kids and stuff. It's like you got to get someone to babysit for a while. I've been thinking about trying to see if I could take my wife to Las Vegas for her birthday in a couple months, but the idea of trying to line up all of the babysitting stuff for even like a weekend is just daunting sounding. So,
Most of your family isn't in Minnesota.
oh, they're right here in town. We moved here so there'd be more family around, but
They just have lives.
well, it's just yeah, and I don't want to. Maybe it's the Minnesota thing, but I don't like to bug people. Like just let them because I don't like to be bugged. So, but I don't want to like ask people for shit. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Earlier today, I was listening to. Are you hip to Joe Rogan? Am I saying his name right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I like
Rogan
listening to him.
Experience or Rogan, whatever. Yeah.
He says everything that I'm scared of saying. So like I was listening to some video on YouTube today during my run, and they were talking about how they were how one of his guests was tripping on like acid or whatever that thing is in like I think the Grand Canyon. And I was like, yo, I want to go to Grand Canyon. Like I'm not a huge fan of like US destinations, but that's one place that I think could probably be very peaceful. So I definitely want to go out to the Grand Canyon. I just don't want to get kidnapped. So I don't know what's out there. But
Yeah, you should come up to Minnesota and go to the Boundary Waters, just right around Superior area, like that. I went and did that this last second year in a row. But I mean, there's no motorized vehicles allowed up there or anything like that. You have to carry everything in with you, and I mean, you just canoe through these pristine, lakes pretty much, and set up your campsite at specific places, and they got rules about leaving trash behind and all that stuff. So it's all very clean, and I don't know, it's
no,
peaceful.
last time I canoed, I was in a Mexican cave getting attacked by a bat. So I'm straight.
Well, there's no caves, no bats. Well, there's probably bats, but I don't know. It's a good time though. It's getting away, and you can see all the stars and everything. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yo, Sean, I'm tapping out.
all
And
righty.
uh,
Yeah, I should probably get going here. So,
it's been real. I think it's always like 4 months since I've talked to you every single time.
yeah, yeah. Let's catch up again in 4 months.
Yeah, yeah, and it'll be interesting. Hopefully, you visited Ireland and all the other places that have castles.
And I'll tell you how much I've now just rediscovered my love for programming and uh, and I don't know what else. I've got
I
caught
think
in a cave in Mexico with a bat. So
I
no.
think we both tapped out. So
Yeah, I think so.
Hey,
All right.
good stuff. It's good talking to you. I'm hitting the stop broadcast button.